A lot of the inhibitions come off.
That's your plan. I'm gonna dagger my balls out of my shorts and at the gym. Oh, they're gonna lose all their inhibitions on the equipment. Actually, Chuck, I would like to work with you on Medicaid reform. And also, I never told anybody this, but I once jerked a guy off in a park. Oh, this elliptical, I just lose my inhibitions. And I would probably be just a skosh more receptive to Schumer's theory of gym-based negotiation strategies if it had worked the last time.
We talk to our Republican colleagues all the time. I talk to them all in the gym. When you're a 60-year-old on a bike panting in your shorts, the inhibitions sort of fall away. When stakes are high, we'll never lose George. The inhibitions sort of fall away.
I'm not here to posture shame. But for a guy who seems to be spending most of his life in the gym, a little less talky talk, a little more core. Second of all, in the gym, they're only being agreeable with you because they want you to leave them alone. In the gym, on the stationary bike. Oh, sure, Chuck, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. But I have to tell you something. Pedaling really hard and not...
Oh, no.
It's a great metaphor for the Democratic Party right now. But for some reason, there is a persistent fiction within the Democratic Party that if they just hang out with Republicans in the gym or wait out Trump's popularity or give them concessions on a continuing resolution they said would harm the country, that Republicans will finally see the light. And Democrats will be rewarded with productive bipartisanship, or, as they put it,
this fever will break. All this excitement about Donald Trump, it's going to break. So it is like a cult. The fever will break.
Is this the night the fever will break?
A chance to break the fever.
I believe at some point soon the fever will break. I think you're going to see the fever break.
President Obama saying, quote, "Now I believe when we're successful in this election that the fever may break."
What in the fuck are we talking about, guys? The fever?
Since the aughts. That's the fever. That is their default resting temperature. This fiction that you are inventing, this idea that somehow, they'll come to their senses, it allows Democrats to keep thinking that Republicans are actually the ones in the precarious position. They've got a very narrow margin in the House, a bit bigger margin in the Senate, and their goals are internally conflicting.
They don't have the numbers.
Republicans need Democratic votes. It's going to be clear they can't pass anything without Democratic help.
Congress won't be able to keep the lights on, let alone
What?
pass anything of substance, without the buy-in and blessing of House Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries. It's a great message, except Republicans have gotten everything through, every crazy appointment. The guy who wrote the children's book on Russiagate runs the FBI. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Weekend Fox and Friends guy. They all sail through. Literally, the only one that has failed so far is picking a Chucky doll that runs on cocaine and Viagra for Attorney General. And that's just because the Republicans personally hated him. Probably for something he did at the gym. Look, you don't understand. These Republicans are committed to a plan born of ideological 50 to 60 year project to remake the United States, and classifying it as a fever excuses you from having to propose an alternative coherent vision and allows you to pretend that this is just an issue of messaging and not merit. Boy, are Dems busy fixing the messaging. Ambitious Democrats have a new game plan. They're going to yak it up about sports and go on more podcasts or whatever the hell this is.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs. Get ready with me while I explain to you how House Republicans are trying to give away your health care to give tax breaks to big corporations. Last week, Republicans introduced their budget resolution.
I'm sorry. I'm having difficulty focusing on what you're saying. Because I'm terrified that you're a hard yellow light away from getting ready with Dan Crenshaw. Obviously, that is not meant in any way to diminish Congressman Crenshaw's service and how he was wounded in Afghanistan, making a Get Ready With Me video. Comedy's legal again, right? Perhaps nothing is as emblematic of this mismatch between the parties than the Democrats' latest viral offering. Now, I understand Democrats would want to showcase that some of their members have not had hip replacement surgery yet. And I hope you understand whatever that last one was. But I'm fighting you while taking a shit. Just understand this. Whatever this is no match for the game Republicans are playing.
Hey, Mira Costa community. Spring enrollment is open. With classes both online and in person, the earlier you enroll, the more choices you have. Secure your spring classes at MiraCosta now. MiraCosta.edu/spring.
Motrin Dual Action with Tylenol. Motrin Targets Pain. Tylenol Plus. Motrin Dual Action with Tylenol.
This Mark Rober Tesla crash scandal has gotten so big, you've got people calling on Elon Musk to sue the YouTuber into the ground, and so we got his response to the backlash and allegations along with new unreleased footage. Donald Trump is now saying Biden's pardons for the January 6th committee are not legitimate, which is a move some have described as Trump going full dictator, and why Trump's deportation of hundreds of Venezuelans to El Salvador using the Alien Enemies Act has set up a massive legal fight. We're talking about all that and much more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco Show. You daily dive into the news, how it's being covered, and how people are reacting to it, starting with this. Former NASA engineer and huge YouTuber Mark Rober has found himself in the midst of a massive Tesla scandal, with Rober currently being accused of misleading viewers in his newest video titled Can You Fool a Self-Driving Car? A video that currently has over 10 million views in just 2 days, and in it, he's testing Tesla's camera detection system versus the LiDAR laser scanning technology in Luminar vehicles. And in the video, you see him put both cars through various tests, first having them approach a test dummy of a child, and both the LiDAR car and Tesla with autopilot turned on stop for the dummy. He then proceeds to add obstacles like the kid entering the road at the last second, fog, water, and bright lights. When the LiDAR stopped for all of them, the Tesla with autopilot on ended up hitting the dummy when faced with fog and water. But then, the test generating the most conversation was a sort of old cartoon Wile E. Coyote style wall that looked like a continuing of the road, with Mark trying to see if the fake road would trick the cars or if they would recognize it as a wall and stop. And in the video, what you see is the LiDAR car stopping, but the Tesla driving through it. And that is where a lot of the backlash is coming in, because Mark said that he was running all these tests using Tesla's autopilot feature, and you can see it appears to be engaged leading up to the wall indicated by that rainbow road. But if you look at the moment it actually crashed, it doesn't look like it was on. And then on top of that, some argue that if you really wanted to accurately compare Tesla's self-driving technology to LiDAR's, autopilot was not the right feature to use. And that because while autopilot has tools like traffic-aware cruise control and auto steer, many Teslas now have a newer tech called full self-driving, or FSD, which has all those tools and many more, which is why you had outlets like Forbes saying, frankly, few are interested in tests on the old autopilot, so that makes Rover's tests fairly meaningless, even if it is the case that the newest FSD system would have made the same errors. We unfortunately don't know. Also, in addition to that, in the description of the video, Mark says that while there was no compensation given and the video was not a paid promotion, Luminar did provide the vehicle so they could test the LiDAR technology. And with that, you had Forbes adding, while Rover may not have known about the software versions available for his car, the crew at Luminar, the LiDAR company which assisted with the test, provided the LiDAR car and system, and has done these tests before, would surely have been aware of them and should have informed Rover. As with all this, there's been a ton of outrage online as well, with people writing things like, FSD was never engaged and nothing was on when he crashed into the wall. The whole video was designed to bash Tesla and promote Luminar, a LiDAR company. As well as I truly don't want to believe Mark did this intentionally, but I mean, the car isn't even on autopilot when it crashes. This is disappointing, Mr. Rover. You also had some saying that Luminar was previously advertising Mark's video on its website, though it appears that's no longer the case, and that has prompted some to question how involved LiDAR and Luminar were in the video. But it appears that while Mark drove the Tesla, someone from Luminar drove the LiDAR, right? They had the company's gear on. And even though Mark said that it wasn't sponsored and they just provided the gear, not everyone seems to be buying that. Also, something that we've seen really blow up around this are conversations around stock prices. There was some noting that Luminar stock went up huge after the video was posted over the weekend, whereas Tesla stock, at least as of recording, has dropped today. So you have some arguing that Tesla should take legal action here, with the creator, Meet Kevin, putting out a video saying Mark defrauded the company and a lawsuit could be filed, adding,
He promotes his own product using this, frankly, defamation against Tesla to promote his own product, while also promoting Luminar Tech. Whether or not Luminar Tech paid Mark Rober here or not may not matter. He creates negative brand for Tesla by implying that the technology he's showing is Tesla's full self-driving technology. He literally writes, "Can you fool a self-driving car?" But he doesn't actually use the self-driving technology in his experiment. This is really problematic because if the test was done more fairly, it'd be tough for Tesla to have an argument here.
Now, for his part with this, Mark responded to some of this backlash by posting the raw footage of the wall test.
Here we go. Here we go. Holy shit.
Right, just like in the YouTube video, you can see that autopilot engages at one point and then goes off just before the crash, and Mark seemed to acknowledge that by writing, "Not sure why it disengages 17 frames before hitting the wall, but my feet weren't touching the brake or gas." But also, notably, his response generated more criticism, right? Some alleging that the clip that he posted was a different take than the one that was in the YouTube video. Right, with all this developing in real time and new questions and accusations popping up, we reached out to Mark Rober for comments or response, and we actually got him on a Riverside call. Keep in mind, this is not a debate. I just want to get on the record responses from him regarding some of the most asked questions, including if he actually did multiple takes of the wall crash video, and then the internet can go from there. Mark, thank you so much for the time. I'm just going to kind of go through the bullet points of accusations and questions regarding the video. And like we talked about beforehand, if there are things that feels like people would think that were missed or were uncovered or come out as we're recording today's video, you said you're open up to follow-ups?
Yeah, sure, totally.
All right, so first one is less of an accusation and more a question, and that was there any reason you opted to test autopilot on the Tesla instead of full self-driving?
My understanding with full self-driving is that you have to enter an address for it to work, and as opposed to just being able to engage it. And this is what Tesla is called, autopilot, and even Googling it, seeing what they determine as autopilot. And my understanding is that the sensor is not different, whether it's full self-driving or autopilot. Knowing if that's a wall or not, that doesn't change. So I think I'd be happy to rerun the experiment in full self-driving. I'm pretty confident it wouldn't be a different result. So to me, it was a distinction without a difference.
The clip that you posted on Twitter where you said, here's the raw footage. Can you explain what it is that we're seeing and what you're trying to explain is happening in that? You said, "Not sure why it disengages 17 frames before hitting the wall, but my feet weren't touching the brake or gas."
So I think people were saying that I was manually just drove it through, because 17 frames, by the way, is like less than a half of a second before it hits the wall. Again, I don't know why it would disengage. I was not pulling on the steering wheel, and by the way, even if I did disengage it, it's less than a half a second before you move off. The outcome would not be different. My guess is maybe the sensors, the ultrasonic sensors, which I think are on the bumper, they probably just disengage if they sense that something big is there, and it just stops being in self-driving mode or autopilot, whatever you want to call it. So that's all I'm saying is like, some people clicked right after and said, "Look, it's not on autopilot," and I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just here. Like, I don't have a horse in this race either, by the way, right? I just wanted to go. I love my Tesla. I'll probably get a new one when they come out.
Gross, dude. Fuck off, then.
Like a political nerve or something. And the video was about LiDAR, like, and all the cool ways LiDAR is used. So I felt like this was a fun test to run. And papers have been run on it. Like, can you fool a self-driving car with a Wile E. Coyote ride? Like, papers have been written on this. So I was like, well, I should just run the test. That's what it was.
Regarding the raw clip and what's in the video, there have been people that say that it looks like you may have had multiple takes, or possibly gone through the wall multiple times. Were there multiple takes? What could you give any insight there?
Was. I mean, this is like what you put in end video. So the first day we went out there, I didn't even see it. We didn't have like the styrofoam wall. It was just like a vinyl sheet, and it was clear if you just drive up with it, you know, you can see the Tesla tells you the maths of what it's looking at, and if you drive up to this wall with the road, it doesn't register anything. It doesn't register a code. It's so like whatever the math that it's doing in the computer, it doesn't register when you paint a road that something's there. Like even if you just drive up to it. So anyways, we did a take. It went right through. I think that was the one that maybe was at 40 miles an hour or something. But it was just like, instead of cutting through it, like which would visually look cool, it just kind of tore the side and like a little flap came up. So it's like, that was a very interesting finding that it actually worked. And by the way, I'm happy to give you the raw footage of that take too. So you'll see it going through the wall, but it's more of a flap. And then we're like, holy crud, I can't believe that really worked. And then, I don't know, like 3 weeks later, we went back outside when the schedule permitted, this time with like a styrofoam wall. Because I thought it'd be funny if it's like, well, now that it goes through the wall, we should have like a fun cutout as it goes through. So I guess in the edit then we used the start of one of those clips. So it went through the wall twice. Once when it was just kind of a flap, and then second when it actually was. And I understood. So I guess that's the confusion there.
So the clip that you posted online or on Twitter was the one where you actually, the raw of you actually going through it the second time?
Yes, that's the second time. Whereas
I think that
You hear the dryer come off,
the cutout,
and
right?
back
The first
on.
time you'll see it's just like a vinyl print. It had the flap ripped up on the side, so it just didn't look as interesting.
Regarding
Love you.
Luminar, there have been a lot of people asking what kind of role they played. But the description of the video says they provided the car for testing. Did they have any say in the edit? Did they have any
They didn't see the edit. I really want to do this. Luminar gave us no money. They had no say in the edit. They did not approach us. They were just a car technology I know that used LiDAR, so I reached out to them and said, hey, will you let us borrow some cars? And then they let us use the cars. So we didn't pay them to come use. They did not pay us. They had no say. And we didn't know what would happen either, by the way. And we told them, look, if your LiDAR fails one of these, it goes in the video. And if Tesla would have passed all of them, by the way, that would have gone in the video. Like, I'm very agnostic. I really just wanted to see what would happen. So truly, I don't have a horse in this race.
And I guess on that, do you or anyone close to you, once again, it's like based off of these accusations, do you or anyone close to you have any Luminar stock?
I do not own any Luminar stock, or I do not know of anyone close to me who owns any Luminar stock. Absolutely, unequivocally no.
And I know you said you love Tesla. Just to confirm, do you have any options or puts on Tesla?
I have no options on Tesla. I have no puts on Tesla. There's no financial anything in here at all. At all, 100%. I'll go into court of law.
Okay, well,
There's all relevant here besides data and interesting. Like, it's an interesting test. That's like the history of my channel. Like, and just whatever the data shows is what I'll put up.
Because it was. Like, this is the thing that people don't understand. Look, Representative Catherine Clark, House Minority Whip, Massachusetts 5th Congressional District, not into hair dye. I don't care. I don't care. Nobody cares. Don't try to make these people into influencers. I don't give a. The only reason why people would care about their personal background of these people and like develop parasocial relations with them is if they like what they're advocating for and believe that they're earnestly on board with making their lives better. That's it. There's a Harry Ensign CNN poll as well on how unpopular the Democrats are.
Hey, Democrats, call your office. You know, we're March Madness time. Terrible, 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 to quote the great Charles Barkley. View Democratic Party favorably. CNN SRS, look at this, 29%. NBC News, you want to go lower than that? About 27%. Both are record lows. The lowest going back to 1992 in CNN polling. The lowest going back on record to 1990 in NBC News polling. The majority of Americans hold an unfavorable or negative view of the Democratic Party at this point. All I can say is I'm a big fan of the oldies, so I'm going to quote Chubby Checker. How low can you go?
I hate to say I told you so. First of all, Mike, you don't hate to say I told you so. You love saying it. I didn't predict anything opposite of this. Like, yes, I'm familiar with the lack of interest from the Democratic Party. I said that it wasn't going to turn into hashtag resistance liberalism like it did last time. And that, yes, people would honestly be even more frustrated as a consequence of this. The difference in opinion that you and I have on this matter is that I'm not so confident that the Democratic Party is going to give way to a third party at all, and they're going to use whatever remainder of the infrastructure they have to actively destroy third-party initiatives, third-party moments. I don't think that we're out of this at all. I don't know how we get out of this to begin with, but yeah, I am also aware and said that this was most likely going to happen, and it is happening. The problem is, I don't even know how to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of this situation with or without the Democratic Party. We're good. Decentralized movements are not always they're not going to be successful. That's one aspect of this conversation. This is the Democratic Party is weaker than it's ever been. I don't know where we go from here. I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to launch a third-party initiative, and without any sort of popular momentum from a well-established figure outside of the confines of the existing duopoly that still gets a warm reception from the pre-existing duopoly, like a Bernie Sanders figure who's entirely too old at this point. Third-party initiatives will be foolhardy and will go the way of the Green Party. In any case, I've been saying this over and over again, the Democrats are slowly but surely refusing to listen to the wishes of the largest subgroup of voters at this point. They're basically treating everyone now like they did during the campaign if you were, in any way, shape, or form anti-genocide, where they were no, I don't want to hear you, you're folk, shut the up, right? That's how they campaigned during the campaign, and that's part of the reason why they paused. Now, they make it seem like these groups that are firmly within the Democratic Party's ecosystem, these groups that the Democratic Party relies on, and their own base of support, 65-year-old Debras and Barbaras, who are actively saying, please, fight back against the Trump administration, we're scared, they're calling them pro-Palestinian advocates at this point. They're treating them in the same way that they did people who were, understandably angry that the Democrats wouldn't do anything. They are actively on their own base at this point. The entirety of their base. Not even the activist part of their base. Not even, the progressive part of their base. Not even the young part of their base. The entirety of it. Once you're yelling at, 55-year-old moms and 65-year-old grandmas for telling you, do something, anything against the Trump administration, you're done. You have no support. You have no base support whatsoever. You can't treat every single person like they are, climate justice sunrise movement protesters. You shouldn't treat them that way either. But the Democrats have gone far too long mistreating its own base of support, the most active part of their base, and all of these grassroots movements with so much ire, with so much disdain. And now they're doing that to liberal-ass grandma, MSNBC voters, MSNBC watchers. It's crazy.
Turn your ideas into video with AI. Add your branding, customize your subtitles, and resize for any platform easily. Then share it with the boss.
NBC voters, MSNBC watchers. It's crazy. They are disgusting.
Democratic voters, you'll get this, the plurality of Democratic voters disapprove of Democrats in Congress, 49%, and just 40.
Yeah, they want a fighter. Democrats want a fighter. They've always wanted a fighter. Anyone that has told you on television they do not want a fighter, that the Dems actually don't want to fight. They want someone who will capitulate and find the reasonable middle ground is a moron. Democratic voters have always wanted a fighter. There's no better living, breathing, microcosmic example of this than me going on the Podjohns and basically saying the exact same things that I always say, but in front of an audience that seemingly had never heard this perspective before, where they were like, oh my god, I didn't realize that there was like a different way possible. Like there was, there was some different serious commentary, serious criticism largely against Democrats that I agree with. They were shocked because they've been kept captive almost by MSNBC. It's truly alarming. Percent approved.
Horrible. Oh my goodness gracious, you just can't get worse than these numbers.
This is the number right here really driving all of this. Democrats have turned, Democratic voters have turned on Democrats in Congress and the Democratic Party. That's what puts the numbers at historic lows. What is it they want to be seeing, these voters?
What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. They don't like what's coming out of some of those Senate Democrats like Chuck Schumer, because take a look at the direction of the party. Democratic voters on Democrats in Congress doing too little to oppose Donald Trump. Look at this, 77%. Should stay principled, even if it means nothing gets done in Washington, D.C.
Like, this is virtually the entirety of the Democratic base of support, like the overwhelming majority, the super majority of the Democratic base of support actively advocating for things that I've been saying and yelling about for years. Get to work, Democrats, right? And the Dems are just going, la 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 la, I can't hear you, shut the f*** up. The level of disdain and the level of disgust that they have for their entire base, not just like select few parts of their base, but the entirety of their base, is alarming. You work for us, you animals. You work for us. We don't work for you, you work for us. That's why I get so angry at liberals who even come in here now and say, oh, aren't you worried about your decisions now? Kamala would never do this. It's like, dude, you are such a moron. Democracy is not about team sports. You got to vote for one team over the other because the one team is going to be marginally better than the other. That's not how democracy is supposed to work. Democracy is about extracting concessions from your elected representatives, okay? It's not team sports. What the f*** is wrong with you? The notion that, like, they didn't lose on their own merits or lack thereof, and it was actually because the voters failed the party, not the party failed the voters, is so insanely backwards. It's so twisted. It's so f***ed up. And these are supposed to be the educated voters who, at least statistically, have, like, a college education. They read the newspaper. They don't believe in fake news. Like, these are the liberals. And they have destroyed their brain smoothing out their brain by watching too much MSNBC. Yeah, here, also, this is the other side of the story. Here, I'm going to give you that too. This is another example of this. Hugging the middle, moderation, and hugging, kissing right-wing fascists. It doesn't work. Gavin Newsom wants to be president. Okay, so what did he do? He set up a podcast. He heard that, like, podcasts are so important for winning elections. Guess what, dude? Here's new data on the reaction to Gavin Newsom's new podcast. Favorability amongst liberals has declined from 40% to 30%. While some Republicans agree with his stances, they overwhelmingly viewed him as insincere, calling him fake and pandering. His net favorability went from +4 to a -6 to a 10-point swing in the wrong direction. Only 13% of voters had an improved perception of him, and only 1 in 5 said the podcast made them want to tune in for more. It doesn't even work in the sphere of podcasting. And Democrats are so one note on this, like, let's hug and kiss the middle. Let's find this, like, reasonable moderate between Steve Bannon and Gavin Newsom, that they even fail at podcasting. I don't understand what these guys are doing. It feels like they just look to some of the most historically unpopular figures like Kyrsten Sinema or Joe Manchin within the Democratic Party, and they're like, we need to be more like that. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? At this point, it's just a podcast, right? It's just a podcast. You want to win an election, don't you? You want to win elections. You want to have a successful podcast. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to behave like this, to operate like this. It doesn't make sense at all. Jesus Christ. Looks like Democrats are saying we don't want to hug the middle. New NBC poll shows 2-1 Democratic leaders to fight back, even if it means partisan gridlock. It is funny to me, though. Like, they are at the very least honest, it seems. They are at the very least honest, like the Democrats seemingly are intellectually and morally consistent on this, where they're like, yeah, even if my podcast fails, I still don't care. I'm still going to abide by this weird-ass attitude that there is some semblance of, like if I were to advocate for the moderate middle, like, then magically someday people will come to terms with what I'm doing. Dems are partnering with more creators, though some worry about an over-reliance on the same friendly/safe group. Dems are so afraid of doing or saying any wrong thing, said Olivia Giuliano, who has not been invited to any creator events since the election. Who are they going to sign off on? Who are they going to work with? They're trying to do it themselves, too. That's the other side. Dude, that's so funny that Olivia Giuliana is not considered considered safe enough. That's amazing. Oh, that's so awesome. David Pacman? Yeah, Brian Tyler Cohen. David Pacman. The problem is, maybe not David, but like Brian is probably actively criticizing them too. Midas Touch. Midas Touch is like a liberal safe territory. I mean, this stuff is so bad too. Like, this has this also has 128 likes. Like, it's so ass. If you're 800 years old, you should not be making TikToks. I mean, you shouldn't even be in Congress, in my opinion. I'm sorry. There's a collection of 47 content creators and staff are involved in the Democratic Strategic Communications Committee's efforts Senate of the party's 47 senators, including 2 independents from caucus of the Democrats. The Senate that Booker chaired, SCC, is driving the creator-focused work. Booker, an early adopter of Twitter and now a fan of selfie-style videos, said he approached Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Oh my God. There's 2 categories in my analysis. Whenever I look at the actions of the party, I look at 2 categories. It's like, is this malicious and they are controlled opposition? Or is this because they're stupid? This, to me, is the stupid camp. This is not like malicious controlled opposition camp. This is stupid camp. In most circumstances, it's both, but this is like an entirely stupid camp decision. Like, they want to do something, but they're too stupid to figure it out. That's what this is. They want to do something. They saw the podcast popping off, tried to warn people as much as I could in this entire product. Mainstream media was coming out and interviewing me like, oh, who's the Joe Rogan to the left? You're the Joe Rogan to the left. And I kept saying, you can't podcast your way out of this problem. You can't podcast your way out of this problem. The party has to change its policies. The party has to communicate earnestly about changing people's material conditions for the better. And they were like, okay, nope, we're going to try to podcast our way out of this problem. Good luck. Oh my God. Even if you remove politics from the equation and think about this on pure marketing terms, it makes no sense to not try to understand what your audience wants from you. Booker says he sees his role as SCC chair as encouraging his colleagues to take the energy they bring to a town hall and instead put it on a digital platform. Calling the talk the anatomy of virality, he pointed out how Republicans were able to get their message, whether it was Joe Biden tripping or falling, or Ted Cruz going on a rant in front of voters while Democrats were not. Oh. Normally, senators don't film. By the way, look at this. This entire article has clips of the Democrats attempting to do this, and then the analytics right here demonstrate that failure. It's not that people can't hear you because you're not directly reaching out to them. It's because people don't like your message, because people don't believe you. People don't believe that you have their best interest in mind. And why should they believe that? You spend every election cycle, some will break loose. And when you're in the minority party, you have some tools at your disposal. You have some tools at your disposal to resist against the Trump administration, and you throw those tools aside and you spit on the face of your voters. All you're good for is begging for donations, man. It's disgusting. Why would people ever defend you? Why would people ever vote for you again? You're so bad. You're so bad at your job. I can't believe that we spend any time on how genuinely awful the Democrats have been pre-election cycle, post-election cycle, when the Trump administration is gutting the administrative state, when they're doing fascist-ass, violating the last bastion of a constitutional democracy with checks and balances. They're just destroying the judiciary. And Democrats are so incompetent that, like, I have to sit here and be like, do something.
Here's 3 questions that every person needs to ask when it comes to CRT, whatever you want to call it, diversity, equity, inclusion, wokeism, whatever. Number 1, is race a characteristic that you care about?
in judging a human being's worth or
Fuck off, Charlie. You fucking dumb bitch.
Oh my god. All the videos did draw attention from the right. Many Democrats, including Congress, questioned whether it was a smart move. Collaborations, cross-posts, and influencer row. Senators participated in a live stream with Pod Save America while opposing the nomination of Office of the Management Budget Director Russell Vaught. And they made videos of creators virtually and in person during the budget vote-orama. House Democrats have also welcomed creators to the Capitol, where they've interviewed lawmakers alongside traditional reporters. In one such instance, at a news conference on Medicaid, a clip of Jasmine Crockett went viral for what her message to us would be. Democrats seem to be really leaning into profanity. Yeah, they're doing TikTok dances, dude. Oh, God, they literally didn't understand that people resent that. Okay, Americans hated nurses doing TikTok dances during COVID. You understand? Nurses that were risking their lives every day to make sure that people weren't dying. Americans despise that. They literally like, oh, why the are you dancing? How dare you dance? It's COVID time and you're over here dancing. Now the one group of people that are the least popular people in America are running around and doing TikTok dances. What the hell are they doing? Yeah, this is a great question. They think Bernie was popular on the internet because he was doing TikTok dances, or was it because he was saying policies young people were excited by? They will never change, man. No, I know. Yeah, Bernie famously is a big TikTok dancer. That's why they like him so much. Bernie's entire existence and his overwhelming popularity across the board, across party lines, unironically destroys this argument in its entirety, but they just cannot admit that, because that would mean admitting ideological defeat. These guys are zealots, okay? They are loyalists. They believe in third-way neoliberalism through and through. That's it. That's the only thing they believe in. They don't care about anything else. They just want to maintain the project. I get screamed from the rooftops at every single Democratic representative to just do Bernie. Just fake it. Just do Bernie. Just do Bernie. Just do Bernie. I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept.
I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. Changing the things I cannot accept.
Sick, man. Sick. You're really cooking with that one. Thank you. That one banged. When every other person in the caucus is 850 years old, they look at that and they go, well, you know, he's a handsome man. He's a handsome young boy. For the Joint Station, Democrats brought 40 creators in to meet with more than 150 members. Silly Jessica Wu, an influencer known as Bento Box Queen, who built an audience of millions while making lunch for her daughters, was invited to the Capitol by Chorus, a new collective that supports creators advocating for democratic cause and policy. She's the influencer behind the viral Choose Your Fighter video. That's who made that video? The Choose Your Fighter video? Oh no. Oh no. I don't know anything about this influencer. I know the video that they're talking about. You know what? Let's watch it. Let's watch that video. Let's watch that video. Does anyone have a link to it? Does anyone have a link to it? Like, this is the thing that people don't understand. Look. Representative Catherine Clark, House Minority Whip, Massachusetts 5th Congressional District, not into hair dye. I don't care. Nobody cares. Don't try to make these people into influencers. I don't give a The only reason why people would care about their personal background of these people and like develop parasocial relationships with them is if they like what they're advocating for and believe that they're earnestly on board with making their lives better. That's it. Public defender attorney, not a morning person. Like, no one. This is aping Trump, to be honest, liberal version. Him going on talking about whatever the. Yes, but the problem is there's two problems there. One, Trump is a television personality. He already had like an audience. He already had a level of prominence, and he's telegenic. And not only that, but he tapped into the things that he successfully perceived as his base caring about, even if he personally doesn't care about them. You understand? He talks about trans people all the time now, right? All the time. If you recall, a couple years prior, even when he was running for president in 2016, he was like pro-trans, openly pro-trans. A couple years ago, when he announced his candidacy, he kept saying, yeah, you guys care about trans people a lot. You care about it more than you care about tax cuts. He knows what his base wants, and he responds to it. He gives them what his base wants. Even if it's red meat, he'll give his base the red meat that they want. And that creates this cycle where he's both charismatic and telegenic enough, but also simultaneously is like offering things to his base support. He cannot create popularity like this. It just doesn't work that way, okay? It doesn't work that way. You can just be like, yeah, I'm a Trekkie for AOC. If instead, if they were like, here, I'm going to introduce you to these congresspersons, and we're going to talk about the top 3 policies that they are going to advocate for the rest of their lives, okay, until the cows come home. This would be a more impactful video. It sounds nerdy, but that's what people care about. Nobody gives a what your favorite TV show is, you know what I mean? Hates balloons. Like, oh man, I hate balloons too. Now I feel so close to this person. Like, that's not how this goes. No one watch it either? No, you're wrong. Dude, I have 40,000 people in here every day. What are you talking about? Do I talk about, like, the personalities behind the things? Or do I talk about the policies and their impact on your lives? My own personality or my own, the parasocial comes after. It's secondary to the causes that I advocate for. That's what's most significant. What are you mean? I'm not even a congressperson either. There are living, breathing examples of this, like Bernie Sanders, Claudia Sheinbaum. Oy, oy, oy. First, Wu said the response to fire video is positive. Feedback focused on girl power, fighting for her audience, which is a larger man of a younger woman. But then it went to the wrong side. She said she didn't mind, though, because she would like to interview Trump and give him a hug, because I feel like he really needed that growing up. The only people who think that video is cringy are older people that don't do TikTok, Wu said. Gen Z people in my comments are like, love it. They think it was just another video. They probably even scrolled. They didn't even think twice. Then the message failed. Like, no disrespect to this content creator, okay? No disrespect to this content creator. Like, this is still entirely the fault of the Democratic Party. Going to a safe influencer, safe because they're not fully invested in the American political machine and how to win elections and whatnot. It's their cowardice causing them to develop results like this one. The process is insanely cringy to people who do care about this. Oh my god. The New York Times is one of the most popular publications in the world and the paper of record in the United States. It's also run cover for Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. It's done this with things like laundering atrocity propaganda, passively framing Israel's war crimes, deliberately avoiding the use of crucial descriptive words like genocide, and more. Today we're going to get a small taste of that by reading through one of their beautiful pieces of journalism, an article published on March 15th titled, Israel Keeps Up Attacks in Gaza Despite Truce. Now already you may notice a bit of a problem with the headline. There's a truce, they say, but Israel is also conducting attacks in Gaza. So is there a truce, or is there not one? If there is a truce, the correct word to use in regards to Israel's conduct is violates. Israel violates the truce by attacking Gaza. An attack on Gaza is a violation of the ceasefire. Any of those would do, anything other than what is written here. Israeli forces killed at least 9 Palestinians in Gaza in strikes on Saturday, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, the latest in a string of Israeli attacks on the enclave that have kept up despite a roughly 2-month-old truce with Hamas. Okay, wait, so not only did Israel violate the ceasefire, but in doing so, they killed 9 people. Why is this mass killing event being downgraded to simply an attack in the headline? A non-ceasefire violating attack at that? Since the ceasefire went into effect in mid-January, the military has conducted constant strikes in Gaza. Israel has accused militants of threatening its forces by laying explosive devices, flying drones, or by approaching where Israeli troops are deployed. Hamas has claimed those attacks have killed more than 150 people since the truce took effect, at least some of them civilians. And it has accused Israel of repeatedly violating the agreement by continuing military operations. So this is a good example of kind of one of the central issues in this coverage, which is that the claims from both Hamas and Israel are being given the same weight in this debate going on in the article, but only one of the figures cited here can actually be confirmed. When Hamas claims that 150 people have been killed, this is a statement of fact. Israel has killed over 150 Palestinians, the vast majority of whom are civilians, including a number of children. We have the names, the video and photographic evidence of their killings, and the medical records. When Israel says that its troops were threatened, Israel provides no evidence for this claim, and yet the New York Times reports it as if it's on par with the claims made by Hamas, claims which have evidentiary backing. On Saturday, the Israeli military said it struck 2 militants who were operating a drone that posed a threat, and then struck a vehicle carrying others who had arrived to collect the drone operating equipment. It did not elaborate on how they posed a threat to Israeli troops.
evidence or even explanation as to why they killed 9 Palestinians with an airstrike during a ceasefire. Ismail Fawabteh, the Director General of the Hamas-controlled government media office in Gaza, said the 9 Palestinians killed in the strike were working for a charity. The identities and statuses of those killed could not be independently verified. So when Palestinians report evidence, the New York Times makes sure to designate their status as a Hamas-controlled, Hamas being a U.S.-designated terrorist organization, mind you. Terrorists are controlling this government media office, as the implication whenever they use this label, and that nothing can be verified independently. The IDF is, of course, absent from the U.S. list of terrorist organizations despite its many terrorist actions. That's because the U.S. is good guys supporting the U.S. and Israel, so that takes care of that double standard there, but the independent verification on their claims goes unmentioned. Interesting. The Israeli military said earlier on Saturday that it had struck 3 militants in central Gaza who were attempting to install explosive devices on the ground near Israeli soldiers. Officials in the Gaza Strip did not respond to requests for comment. The steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes is a reminder that while Israel and Hamas have reached an agreement that paused most of the fighting in Gaza, a comprehensive truce is still nowhere in sight. In Lebanon, Israel is conducting a similar aerial campaign against the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah, a Hamas ally. During the U.S.-brokered ceasefire there, saying Israeli forces are attacking sites and operatives that have breached the agreement. So the exception to the rule of, quote, most of the fighting being paused in Gaza is the steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes. Why is the steady drumbeat of Israeli strikes not the focus of this article? What a poetic way to describe something that must certainly be in violation of a ceasefire, right? Steady drumbeat. The war in Gaza began after Hamas's deadly October 7th attack on southern Israel, which killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, according to Israel's government. About 250 others were taken back to Gaza as hostages. The New York Times, as most Western outlets do, choose to start the clock on this war on October 7th of 2023. Did anything happen before that that could have led to the conditions that may have led to such an attack? Were any other options explored, perhaps even nonviolent ones, by the people who undertook it to alleviate said conditions? What happened in the preceding 70 years? Was there a brutal occupation and repeated campaigns of ethnic cleansing, a medieval siege controlling everything that goes in and out of the Gaza Strip, repeated high-tech massacres of innocent civilians in Gaza, massacres Israel itself refers to as mowing the lawn? Is any of that relevant? Who knows? Definitely not the New York Times. Israel's subsequent military campaign against Hamas has killed more than 48,000 people, including thousands of children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The figures do not distinguish between civilians and combatants, and the Israeli military claims to have, quote, eliminated nearly 20,000 Hamas operatives. So this is just straight up IDF propaganda right here. Weighing these claims against one another as even remotely comparable is IDF propaganda. There's no other way of putting it. The Israeli attacks in Gaza are characterized by an extremely high civilian casualty ratio in comparison with other armed conflicts in the last decades. As of January 2025, 15 months into the attacks, over 46,000 persons have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. Some 24,000 out of the 40,000 who have been identified are women, children, and older persons, making almost 59% of the identified fatalities. While the estimated number of combatants killed by the ISF varies, there is no doubt that civilians comprise the vast majority of the persons killed since the Israeli attacks began. According to a United States intelligence assessment from May 2024, Palestinian armed groups have lost 30 to 35% of their fighters in Gaza since October 2023. The Commission therefore estimates the death toll of Hamas and other armed groups as between 6,000 and 14,000, given an estimated strength of about 20 to 40,000 militants prior to October 2023. One report estimated that 8,500 militants were killed. The ISF claimed in October 2024 that it had killed about 17,000 Hamas operatives and members of other armed groups. Given that the number of adult male fatalities since October 7th has been around 16,000, this would mean that the ISF considers all adult male Palestinians in Gaza to be members of armed groups and so legitimate targets. So even if the total number of male deaths were 16,000, 4,000 less than what the New York Times is so graciously quoting the IDF as saying, that still means that there are no innocent men in Gaza. The IDF has repeatedly and egregiously lied about the ratios of combatants to civilians killed. The evidence we do have, far from being the most moral army in the world, it's like the least moral army in the world by a long shot. The army that committed and is currently committing genocide. That's another thing that goes completely unmentioned in this article, the whole genocide thing. Who cares about that, though? That's just a bunch of independent human rights organizations. The only credible sources on the matter are IDF, I guess. There's certainly no conflict of interest there in citing them. Israeli leaders say they will not end the war against Hamas until they topple the group's rule in Gaza and the territory no longer poses a threat to Israel. Hamas has shown some willingness to give up civilian governance in Gaza, but has drawn a red line on disbanding its battalions of armed fighters. How rude of them to refuse to disband their military capabilities. It's not like that's some recognized right under international law for an occupied group of people. Dicks. Israel and Hamas are supposed to be negotiating the next steps in the ceasefire agreement, which would involve a permanent end to the war, the release of the remaining living hostages, and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Mediators, including the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, have made little headway so far, given the entrenched disagreements between the two sides. Yeah, entrenched disagreements. Both sides have those for sure. Could there be any valid reasons for disagreement among one of these two parties? Perhaps the violations of the ceasefire that you just spent an entire article describing, could that have anything to do with these alleged disagreements from both sides? I legitimately cannot read the New York Times without getting really angry and writing a script about it. Israeli forces remain deployed in a buffer zone inside Gaza and along the Philadelphia corridor, which runs along Gaza's border with Egypt. Under the terms of the ceasefire, Israel was supposed to have withdrawn from the Philadelphia corridor by mid-March. Oh, that's good. Thanks for the heads up. So they also are violating the ceasefire in another way, on top of the steady drumbeat of attacks. Thanks for letting us know, I guess, at the very last sentence of the article. Really cool. So what do we notice from this article here? Overall, it's just a masterclass in manufacturing consent. The New York Times passively reports clear evidence of Israel's ceasefire violations, while weighing them against Israel's unverifiable defenses with long histories of fabrication and falsehood. The New York Times offers a disgustingly passive and vague recounting of the numbers, names, and circumstances surrounding the Palestinian deaths. The death toll of over 150 Palestinians includes many children, such as Ahmad Abed, a 7-year-old Palestinian boy that was killed just days ago. Crucially, the article makes no mention of Israel's complete blockage on humanitarian aid entering Gaza. On March 15th, the day that this article was published, Israel had completely blocked any entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza for over 2 weeks. 2 straight weeks of no food, no water, no supplies, no housing, a recent total halt on any electricity. All of these restrictions calculated to bring about the suffering and destruction of this group of people, and all of them in direct violation of the ceasefire agreement, international law, and the ICJ's provisional measures issued against Israel to prevent the crime of genocide from taking place. To the New York Times, none of this is important. The fact that 6 babies have frozen to death due to the harsh conditions, lack of fuel, and lack of housing, all a direct result of Israel's aid blockage, completely man-made deaths, all that is unimportant to the New York Times. To end this video today, I want to turn briefly to the newspaper Haaretz. Haaretz is the Israeli paper of record, and Haaretz is weird because a lot of their coverage is as bad or worse than the New York Times in terms of taking for Israel's genocide, but of late their coverage has been quite direct and honest, much more than anything you'll see in the West. That isn't saying much, but let's just read to get an idea. Article headline: 9 killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, including journalists, Palestinian medics say. Right away, wow, okay, look at this. 9 killed in not just attacks, but Israeli airstrikes. They're naming the perpetrator. The victims include journalists, a claim made by the source of Palestinian medics. That's crazy. They didn't call them U.S. terrorist-designated Hamas-run health ministry operatives or whatever. They just said Palestinian medics. How refreshing. The IDF said it targeted a terrorist cell operating a drone that was threatening Israeli forces, while local media outlets in Gaza reported that the victims were journalists using a drone to film humanitarian aid. Even the simple choice of what order to place those sources and quotes in does something, right? Contrasting the IDF's claim with the many sources in Gaza with no conflict of interest, unlike the IDF, makes the summary of the situation a little more honest, I think. Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip on Saturday killed at least 9 people, including 3 local journalists, according to Palestinian medics. The death toll represents the highest number of casualties in a single day since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas began in January. The IDF said 2 of the victims were operating a drone that posed a threat to the soldiers. The other victims, according to the army statement, were gathering the gear left over on the ground. They go on to quote the IDF's miraculous revelation that every single person that they killed, including the multiple journalists, were actually covert, undercover terrorists, operatives. It's far from the first time they've had such miraculous revelations post-journalist murdering. The Palestinian Journalist Protection Center in Gaza said that the victims were journalists using a drone to film humanitarian aid. The organization said in a statement that the targeting of journalists prevents the world from being exposed to the truth about what is happening in Gaza, and called on the international community to condemn attacks on journalists. This assault constitutes a war crime that violates press freedom and endangers media and aid workers, they added. More journalists have been slaughtered in Gaza over the course of the last 17 months than any conflict in modern history. This is just another chart in the long graph of such murders. And on top of there being a righteous call to condemn such actions, is the repeated cowardice of journalists from places like the New York Times for staying completely silent on what's happening, for being willing to publish articles that normalize Israel's war crimes and genocide, while the people of their own profession are being cut down, murdered repeatedly with their families. They can watch this happen and still report on the very murders of the people that are in their profession, while immediately sharing the murderer's side of the story. It's just despicable and cowardly, and every journalist that works for the New York Times should be ashamed. Hamas said in a statement that the deliberate killing and barbaric attacks once again confirm Israel's intention to undermine the ceasefire agreement and its deliberate sabotage at every opportunity. Hamas spokesman Hazem Qasim added that Israel's attack on journalists and humanitarian workers violates the ceasefire agreement. Referring to Israel as the occupation, he said that Israel deliberately targeted humanitarian aid workers seeking to worsen the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and push the population towards famine following the tightening of its blockade on border crossings and obstructing entry of all aid. So the only time in both of these articles we get any mention of the aid blockages, which are also a ceasefire violation, are when Haaretz does the brave, bold choice of quoting the other side. Haaretz is Hamas now, I guess. I'm sure that's probably that. I'm going to look that up and show screenshots. I know that they're saying that probably. The Indonesian hospital said it received 8 bodies from 2 airstrikes in the same area of the northern town of Beit Lahia on Saturday. Fares Awad, head of emergency services in northern Gaza, identified one of the dead as Mahmoud Islim, a local reporter who was operating a drone. Several were critically wounded as the strike hit a car with casualties inside and outside the vehicle, the medics added. Witnesses and fellow journalists said the people in the car were on a mission for a charity called Al Khair Foundation in Beit Lahia, and they were accompanied by journalists and photographers when the strike hit them. So hopefully in reading both of those articles, we can see both the New York Times' disgusting passivity and normalization through their repeated citation of the IDF's own defenses as essentially fact, versus the modicum of integrity that we get from Haaretz in this specific instance, with their willingness to critically analyze the sources of their information and not do, IDF PR. Ultimately, neither of these outlets were willing to show imagery of what took place. And when you see the faces of the children that Israel has slaughtered during this quote-unquote ceasefire, or when you see the carnage inflicted upon the group of journalists trying to simply gather evidence of the starvation of their people for which they were executed, it tells a slightly more in-depth story than 9 killed. Anyways, that's it for today's video, just a short one. The sources are linked below. I made a post on my community tab about it, but my videos on Gaza keep getting demonetized, partly because I want to be able to show footage I think is necessary to show, and also partly because I don't censor the words I use when I think they're important to use to call things what they are. I'm not going to say unalive or SA or G-side in place of murder, rape, or genocide, because it's precisely that toning down of language that has created a media environment where Israel's crimes are being normalized and whitewashed. And because of that, my videos get demonetized, and because of that, I use sponsors, and I'd rather not have to put sponsored segments in my videos. So consider joining my Patreon to support the channel once it gets to a certain place. It'll just be a lot easier for me to keep the show going and not have to break it up.